Madam Chair, council members, and participants.
Thank you, Modesto. Good afternoon, everyone. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phl.com. I now note that the hour has come. Rachel, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, just say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on the screen when you speak.
Councilmember Alan Dom.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, colleagues, and the listening public.
Councilmember Derek Green.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Council colleagues, John Public. Looking forward to today's conversation.
Councilmember Helen Gem.
Good morning. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to the listening public.
Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and council colleagues and all who are logged in for this hearing. Thank you so much.
And Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Happy to be here.
That was it, Rachel?
Yes, council members Brian O'Neill and Maria Sanchez are not in attendance right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present and this hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Labor and Civil Service on resolution number 200098. Rachel, will you please read the title of the resolution?
200098, a resolution authorizing the Committee on Labor and Civil Service to hold hearings regarding the safety and well-being of workers in the Sanitation Division of the Streets Department.
Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized in order to fully comply with the Sunshine Act. The chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before I ask Rachel to call up the first panel for resolution number 200098, I have a few opening comments that I would like to make. Let me just note for the record that this resolution number 200098, I introduced this on January 30th, 2020. For the benefit of the public, I want to say that again. I introduced this resolution on January 30th, 2020, before most of us even knew what the coronavirus was and had no idea what COVID-19 meant. Indeed, if you read the entire text of this resolution, there is not one single mention of COVID-19. but there is a mention of other hazards that sanitation workers face each and every day on the job. And that is important for me to note for the record, because I want to note that we were not sort of responding with emotion simply because of the moment and or because of COVID and the crisis came. This was pre all of that. These hazards range from extremes, such as the use of needles and feces, to the more common, such as exhaust fumes and weather. Part of the impetus for this hearing was in October 2019, I read an article that was written by WHYY, and it highlighted some of the hazardous conditions faced by many sanitation employees. The article said that the city provides sanitation workers with certain protective gear, but the gear the city provides is viewed as low quality and often ineffective. Another reason for this hearing is that I met with some constituents of mine who are sanitation employees. To them, working on a trash truck was a good job, one with reliable hours, good pay, and benefits. And one that I know of on a personal note, because before I was born, as often stated in my family, I had an Uncle Jimmy and Uncle Lonzo, who were both employees of the sanitation department. And listening to my grandmother and matriarchs of my family talk with them and their work with the city in this capacity, it was done with great pride and joy because they had the ability to achieve self-sufficiency. When I talk with my constituencies, all of my constituents who talk with me about this issue after reading the article, they also talked about the job being able to put them on a path to family sustaining livelihood. And obviously, since I introduced the resolution, COVID-19 has upended every sense of normal that we once knew. And with that said, the trash still has to be picked up, albeit with some delays, many of which were out of the control of sanitation workers. But suffice it to say, our sanitation employees are still out there working day in and day out through rain and sleet and snow and 100+ degree days, all with the threat of COVID-19 looming over them. And yes, COVID is certainly a hazard to them right now, maybe even the biggest hazard. But once COVID is gone and we have a vaccine, there will still be other hazards remaining. My hope is that this hearing is what we can use to begin exploring what it may mean for our sanitation workers to get some sort of environmental stress pay or exposure pay for the difficult job that they do. Before we get started, I want to reiterate something that my resolution says, and I want to state this for the record. Mayor Jim Kenney should be commended for remaining committed to keeping our city clean. Streets Commissioner Carlton Williams should be acknowledged for advancing the department and meeting its critical goals with the resources his department has been given. With that being said, and I need you all to know this, because we want to be a straight shooter. Whenever I talk with members in the department who work in the sanitation department, when I've talked to the leadership, Salam and Charles Carrington, I was very clear that I did not want this hearing to turn into any sort of blame game where we sort of just pointing fingers about who didn't do what, because I will referee if I have to do that. But instead, I want this to be a hearing that gives council the opportunity, as well as the public at large, to learn more about the job it is that our sanitation workers do, and they do it well as the potential hazards they face each day, and how we as a city must come up with a financial tool, a vehicle that will help us provide the environmental stress pay, exposure pay, hazard pay that our workers deserve. With that in mind, I'm going to ask Rachel to please call the first panel.
Carlton Williams, Keith Warren, and Christopher Newman.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Parker and members of the Labor and Civil Service Committee. My name is Carlton Williams, Commissioner of the Department of Streets. I'm here to offer the following testimony on Resolution 200098, sponsored by Councilmember Parker. I am joined today by Deputy Commissioner for Sanitation, Keith Warren, and Deputy Commissioner for Administration, Christopher Newman. As you all well know, and as was pointed out by Councilmember Parker, with the COVID outbreak, the Department of Streets has been challenged with delivering all its core services, including the collection of curbside trash and recycling. Increased household tonnage from residents staying at home, as well as staff attendance issues, caused longer than usual delays to our collection cycle in the Sanitation Division. Throughout the course of the pandemic, our sanitation workers have continued to serve the city on the front lines. Their health and safety remain a top priority for the department. Prior to the pandemic, the department distributed the following personal protective equipment and safety gear to sanitation employees in the field, including steel-toe boots to prevent punctures from sharp objects, reflective vests and clothing to optimize visibility in traffic, hard hats for transfer and transfer stations, gloves, construction and prick-proof, eyewear, face masks, disposable, and respiratory provided per assignment. Coveralls, rain suits, hand sanitizers, neoprene suits, and N95 masks were given to any worker assigned to any special collection, such as removing known hazard items like furniture infested with bed bugs or trash piles and opioid encampments. In order to protect the health and safety of our employees, the department requires a minimum of laborers and drivers to wear steel-toe boots, gloves, reflective vests, and drivers are required to wear hard hats and dump sites, representing a $209,000 cost investment for FY20, not including COVID-related additional purchase items, which total an additional $230,000 from April 2020 to present. Our commitment to the protective safety of our employees is reflected in the department's injury statistics, which show that the vast majority of our employee injury claims are not the result of the lack of PPE. Since March 1st, 2020, we have purchased and distributed thousands of additional PPE items, including disposable face masks, reusable reinforced cloth masks, face shields, hand sanitizers, and other disinfectants such as bleach and germicide to clean trucks and other high-touch areas. On the issue of hazardous pay, we sympathize with calls to provide additional pay for frontline workers who continue to put their lives on the line during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, any proposal for hazardous pay for the sanitation team or any city workers would need to be supported with outside funding from state and federal sources. As with many other municipalities, Philadelphia is facing one of the greatest financial downturns the city has ever seen. As a reminder, the city did ensure contract extensions for all 4 municipal unions during the COVID pandemic, despite the financial challenges we faced. That one-year extension provided all representative employees with a percentage raise, and in most cases, a one-time bonus. For sanitation workers specifically, they received a 2% raise and a one-time $750 bonus. In addition, all frontline workers employed with the city continue to be eligible for overtime per union rules. All city workers have access to COVID testing. There are dozens of testing sites available throughout the city of Philadelphia. That list has been posted publicly on phila.gov/testing throughout the pandemic. The city's health insurance covers the COVID-19 test. For FY21, the city faced an unprecedented budget shortfall of nearly $750 million. While the majority of the deficit was closed with reductions to departmental budgets not related to staff, unfortunately, a minimum number of workers were required to be laid off. There are no further cuts planned at this time. We will continue to work with state and federal officials to bring all relevant resources to the city of Philadelphia as we continue to battle this pandemic. Over the last 15 years, the Department Sanitation Division has increased 17% from $94.6 million in fiscal year 2006 to $110.9 million in fiscal year 2021. In addition, the division's Class 100 employee compensation budget has increased by 27% during the same period from $45.3 million to $57.5 million. However, a review of actual expenditures shows that overall real costs have increased considerably beyond initial budgeted amounts. The division's actual overall expenditures have increased by 25% from $92 million in fiscal year 2006 to $114 million in fiscal year 2020. Class 100 employee compensation costs have even been more dramatic, with a 40% increase during that same period, from $44.6 million in fiscal year 2006 to $62.7 million in fiscal year 2020. The notable difference generally reflects the volatility experienced throughout the years and overtime expenditures, which have risen dramatically, particularly since fiscal year 2013. It is important to point out that all salary increases for our union represented employees have been in line with applicable collective bargaining agreements. In addition, an overall assessment of long-term division budget increases should be reviewed in the context of sanitation's share of the city's total budgetary resources throughout the years, particularly recent years where we have been fortunate to obtain significant funding increases. For example, this same 15-year period has shown a recent return to sanitation staffing levels we have not experienced since fiscal year 2006. From an average staff count of 1,236 that fiscal year to an average staff count of 1,255 in fiscal year 2020. During the economic downturn of the Great Recession, we experienced a decline in staffing from fiscal year 2008 until fiscal year 2010, where thereafter we consistently averaged between 1,150 and 1,160 sanitation employees, with the only notable exception during fiscal year 2015 when we averaged 1,140 employees because we did not have enough compactors to staff crews. The recent resurgence of the increased sanitation staffing is a significant achievement as it demonstrates the administration's commitment to sanitation operations, including an effort to return to more comprehensive street cleaning operations. To date, this fiscal year, FY 2020, for example, we have 1,265 full-time sanitation employees and 150 temporary employees for a total of 1,390 employees. The current staffing levels allow us to better meet our goals of on-time collections as we enter the 7th month of this pandemic and collect trash and recycling tonnages averaging 30% more than the previous year. To date, budget cuts as a result of the pandemic have not impacted citywide curbside collections. Citywide mechanical sweeping, however, has been eliminated over the next 5 years. Our commercial corridor cleaning program remains in place. We will continue to utilize our existing resources and partnership strategies with other agencies to improve litter conditions across the city. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and me and my staff will be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. And I just, for the record, want Keith Warren, because we just want to make sure that we can hear them. Keith Warren, our Deputy Streets Commissioner of Sanitation. Keith, can you just say something so that we can see you? Okay. All right. Hi, Keith. And Christopher Newman, Deputy Streets Commissioner for the administration. Are you on, Christopher?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure we could get you all up. I also need to note for the record that Council Majority Whip Curtis Jones is on and is ultra concerned about this issue. So thank you, Council Member Jones, for joining us here today. Commissioner, I want to...
It's Councilman Brian O'Neill. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to have some technical difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember O'Neill. We appreciate you being here. Councilmember O'Neill, just for the record, is the Vice Chair of the Council Committee on Labor and Civil Service. So thank you, Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I am looking at your testimony, and I want to just start here. You say that prior to the pandemic, the department distributed the following PPE and safety gear to sanitation employees in the field. You talked about the boots, the vests, the clothing, the hard hats, the gloves, the eyewear, the face masks, the coveralls, the rain suits, the hand sanitizers, the neoprene suits. Did I say that right? Neoprene suits. Neoprene suits. The N95 mask were given to any worker assigned to special collection, such as removing hazardous items like furniture infested with bed bugs or trash piles and opioid encampments. Can you please just clarify for me, did you provide all of this protective gear before COVID was in existence?
That's correct, Councilperson Parker. That was before COVID. That was offered to us as our standard uniform issuance. Certain items, because of the jobs as mentioned earlier, like the opioid encampments, where there is a possibility of even more hazards by picking up needles, or there's an opportunity for the mechanical sweeping program with the increased dust that was generated. We got additional equipment, but the standard gear that you see and have in front of you is what we offer to all of our employees that join the department. We also give an allocation each year of $200,000 to ensure that any of those items that are damaged, replaced, or just with wear and tear can be replaced at the request of the employees in the department at any time throughout the year.
Let me ask you, did you also provide all of this gear once COVID-19 hit in March 2020? So you just acknowledged that this was the gear you issued pre-COVID, and once COVID hit, this was the gear that you issued. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the gear that you had is standard. We enter all employees. When COVID hit, we invested another $230,000 in additional equipment, and that included the protective face shields, the additional hand sanitizer, the masks, several types of masks. We were limited in being able to get masks in competition with other essential service agencies in terms of N95 masks that we tried to get in, but we tried to get as much of that equipment to our employees as quickly as possible during the pandemic.
Let me ask you this. I appreciate in your testimony your empathizing with calls to provide additional pay for our frontline workers who continue to put their lives on the line during this COVID-19 pandemic. With this being said, let me ask you, are you aware of any other municipalities in the nation that have provided some sort of hazard pay to sanitation workers, either pre-COVID or post-COVID? What other municipalities provide hazard pay?
Right. So prior to COVID, I do not know, and we will have to look into what other municipalities have. Chris Newman, my Deputy Commissioner of Sanitation, does have comparable salary data that shows the equivalent to what our employees, and will testify that it's on par with other municipalities around the country. I don't know if that includes an additional hazard pay package. So that's something that we would have to look at prior to COVID. During COVID, after or post-COVID, when the pandemic or present COVID situations, there have been municipalities that offered some kind of incentive-based hazardous pay for municipalities in some areas. I know the city of Atlanta looked into it. I know the city of Baltimore also was looking into it as well. So again,
Commissioner, let me just ask for the record that that your office, if you could provide that information to us, and if you could do it with comparable municipalities, right? Because we literally want to compare apples to apples, and if your department would be able to give us that information so we can distribute that to members of council, that would be extremely helpful in helping us to inform our future decision making.
Absolutely.
Let me also here ask you to give me some details relative to the layoffs that occurred due to COVID-19 budget cuts, right? Were they streets department employees in general or sanitation employees in particular? Were the employees unionized or were they the exempt non-rep employees? And how many sanitation employees in total were laid off?
Sure. I'm going to also bring in Chris Newman for the exact numbers. I can tell you that some of the programs that were near and dear to the city and to sanitation was cut, like Future Track. That was a program that employed at least 40 people throughout the year that gave them a pathway into the streets department, whether it was sanitation or whether it was in highway or other transportation opportunities. But most of the jobs actually were external to sanitation, and sanitation did not get the number of cuts that the rest of the department had to endure. So I'll allow Chris Newman to give you the details and specifics.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We laid off about 15 future trackers. They were the remaining future trackers that were in our program at that time. And we did have some interns. They were mostly engineering interns that we also let go. I believe there was about 6 to 9 of them at the time. And that was it. So no civil service employees, Councilwoman.
Okay, thank you. Again, it's important that we get all of this on the record now. And again, when I think about and I'm being intentional, I want you to know so that folks get, this is not sort of, post-COVID piling. We are not Johnny come lately to being concerned about hazard pay for sanitation workers. And so the data that you're providing now, particularly relative to those who were laid off, just acknowledging that they work for interns in the engineering department. The public didn't know that. I know I didn't know that. When you talked about that being 15 future trackers, I didn't know that either. So that informs our thinking as well. The last area, and I'm looking in the chat box for my colleagues to note when they're interested in asking some questions. I want to just correct your testimony just a little bit here. When you speak to the increase in spending in the streets department since 2006. Now, as my resolution said, according to an analysis conducted by the City Council's technical staff, that's our tech staff, and adjusting for inflation, funding for the Streets Department, and specifically its Sanitation Division, has been, in essence, effectively flat for about for at least the past 15 years. Now, it appears, Commissioner, that your testimony did not take into account inflation when reporting the spending figures. So I just want to go through these because I had my office to run some numbers, and here is what they found. They used an inflation calculator on usinflationcalculator.com and found that $94.6 million in 2006 would be $122.14 million in 2020. So if spending in FY21 is $110.9 million, that's actually less than flat funded as compared to 2006. In addition to that, when we used the $45.3 million in 2006 spending, that would be $58.49 million in 2020 dollars. That is effectively flat funded as compared to 2006. And I could go on with all of those numbers that you gave, Commissioner. I guess you see where I'm going. You're reporting them, but we did not adjust for inflation in those numbers. So for my colleagues, even when we look at Class 100 employee compensation cost increase, they hasn't actually been that steep, because if we look at this, $44.6 million in 2006 dollars, that's actually $57.6 million in 2020 dollars. If the actual spend was $62.7 million in fiscal year 20, that is just over an 8% increase in salary as compared to fiscal year 06, and that's not a 40% increase. An 8% increase in salary costs over 15 years does not seem to be extreme to me, particularly if we added 19 jobs and including cost of living increases. So again, Commissioner, I appreciate your putting that on the record, but depending on if you adjust for inflation, those numbers, would move. The next thing, the hazards. Your testimony speaks extensively to hazards of COVID-19, but less to other hazards that sanitation workers face. In my opening comments, when I first met with Charles Carrington and Omar and talked to the leadership at 33, we were talking about the hazards that were there pre-COVID. What would you say are the biggest hazards besides COVID? Because that is when I introduced this. So I want to give that some comments because COVID has only further exacerbated that.
Got you. Thank you, Councilperson Parker, for your comments. First of all, I want to say for the record, you're correct. We did not, our budget is not adjusted according to inflationary numbers. And our budget office can answer those questions in reference to how our budget is allocated in respect to other city agencies and in entirety. So that's basically how we came up with our numbers that differentiates for what you stated earlier. So you're absolutely correct in those areas. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Secondly, in terms of the biggest hazards our employees face each day, it's the type of equipment material and the amount of material that they collect on a daily basis. If you get in touch with the city's risk management division, they can give you the number of injuries, which we think is an indicator of how our employees are impacted each and every day. And the biggest threat to our workers is the weight and the amount of material that they collect on a daily basis. It's not so much the PPE, while that is a critical, important component. The data that we see suggests that the way our employees handle material and the way people set out their trash and the amount of material causes further injuries than injuries related to PPE. So I would say that is a big concern for us because those injuries are severe. Normally they're back injuries, they're long-term injuries. And these injuries are definitely threats to their long-term health and viability. And so we want to make sure that those things are addressed. I am not minimizing the fact that those other hazards do exist. The needles that are out there that they're constantly picking up, the type of debris and the hazardous material that people place out in trash is also a big issue for our workers. But the biggest impact that we're had is injuries to our employees while doing the work out there. I just want to say for a record, it is an extremely dangerous job. I was out there again this summer working with our guys, throwing trash. I experienced some of the challenges that they face, and I can tell you that it was very grueling in the hot summer months where they're out there working each and every day. So I appreciate you having this hearing to discuss it and coming up with ways that we can address and keep our employees safe for the benefit of everybody, including our workers.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next question comes from Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Williams and Deputy Commissioner Warren, and all of the sanitation workers who are represented on the call. Carrington, it's so good to see you, and Mr. Salam. I just wanted to ask for the record about the steel toe boots. Okay, you mentioned that each year, each sanitation worker receives a voucher for steel toe boots?
That's correct.
Okay, and do we have a figure on how much it would be to provide them with a second steel toe boot voucher? I just wanted to get that on the record. I know that sure. I sent that communication to the administration, but I wanted to get that on the record for the hearing. Commissioner?
I'm sorry, we were going in and out a little technical.
Okay, my apologies. I wanted to make sure
speaking.
you could hear me because I'm in City Hall, so the Wi-Fi. But at any rate, I wanted to get that on the record because I had an opportunity to go out with the sanitation crew over the summer and see the arduous work that they are undertaking, particularly in this moment, but even prior to COVID, as the resolution sponsor has stated. And Madam Majority Leader, I just want to commend you for the timeliness of this resolution that was introduced before COVID and before we knew of the challenges that we would be facing. So thank you for your work. But Mr. Commissioner, I just wanted to know a figure of how much it would be to provide a second boot voucher for the workers, knowing that a number of them have been working longer hours and more days as a result of what's happening around COVID.
Sure. I'm going to turn that one over to Deputy Commissioner Chris Newman to talk about the costs. They handle our budget for the department. So Deputy Commissioner Newman or Warren, feel free to respond to the councilperson Gilmore Richardson.
Councilperson Richardson, I would estimate, and I would have to get you specific costs, but I would estimate that it wouldn't be that much of an impact on our budget because of the size of our budget. It probably would be somewhere between $10,000 to $18,000 total for the year.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Newman, for that information, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Helen Gim. Councilwoman?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. I also want to share all of our colleagues in saying and expressing gratitude for all the work that you've been doing. This has been incredibly difficult times. And I know how important it is to our entire city that your department be at the top of our priority list. So thank you very much. One of my questions was about whether the department requires its workers to wear masks. I did not see it on the list of required gear like steel-toed boots and things like that.
Prior to the pandemic, it was not a requirement. After the pandemic, obviously that raised the level of concerns about health and safety, not only for our employees, but for other members in the department. So yes, it was a requirement after COVID-19 hit in March 2020.
And these are masks that the department provides to all of its workers?
That's correct. Mainly sanitation workers. Those are the masks that we provide, and specifically the additional masks were after COVID-19 hit.
And do you standardize the type of mask that they wear? Like, is it an N95 or a certain type? Just because they are like very exposed to a lot of things. They're out obviously a lot, and so is there like a quality to the type of mask that you can guarantee, and that the department provides directly to them?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Well, the N95 mask that we purchased in the beginning became very limited in quantity because of the demand, especially around hospitals, other emergency response personnel. And so we tried to get an equivalent or something that was at least equal in value or close to it as possible to keep our employees safe. Because it wasn't available, it made it very difficult for us to obtain and achieve, but we did our best through procurement to procure as many masks as we possibly could that were of highest quality.
I know that was one of the issues that gets raised. I mean, in part because, I mean, all of us are wearing masks, right? And I think we all now, I am also learning like what a difference it is to be able to have a mask that gives you enough space to be able to breathe and do your work and speak articulately and clearly, and ones that just kind of like cover your face. You know, there's a big difference in terms of the ability, especially when you're doing strenuous work. They're doing heavy lifting and breathing in a lot. So one of the concerns has been if they have like a low quality mask, it makes it almost impossible to do the work because you're heaving, like I've seen, talk to a lot of folks. And, I know a lot of my colleagues have gone out already and have just talked about the physical exertion of it makes the quality of the mask really important. And is that something that you might be presenting to either the administration or to council as one of the priority areas for you?
Yeah, we continuously have to look at all types of masks, even the most high quality masks like the N95. Many of our employees complained about the difficulty it was to wear them and to do that work, especially in temperatures that exceeded nearly 100 degrees at times. So it made it very hard for them to breathe, just to do their jobs on a daily basis. So I think we need to continue to explore what is the best type of mask to give to a worker in this type of environment. It may work well for medics and doctors, but it may not work well for someone who's out there throwing 15 or 16 tons of trash in 100-degree heat every day. It may pose its own additional health qualities for people who may have breathing emergencies or heart conditions that, where they can't get enough air. It may cause them difficulty breathing. So I think we need to continue to explore what the products that are out there that will best suit our employees in this type of environment for the work that they do.
Okay. And how many sanitation workers in your department have tested positive for COVID? Are you able to share?
Chris Newman has the details on the numbers since the pandemic began, and he can provide that for you.
Sure. Thank you. Councilperson, since the pandemic began in March, we've had 86 sanitation employees test positive for COVID.
And what percentage of your workers would that be?
So if we did a percentage, it'd be about.
Or even if you told me what your total workforce is, that'll be clear.
It'd be less than 1%, 0.06%.
Okay. And does everyone have access to testing through your department who requests it? Or do they have to kind of be part of this, they have to find their own testing site, or do you offer?
We don't offer testing. They would have to find their own testing site for that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I may have further questions later.
Thank you, Council Member Gim. And listen, as we proceed with this hearing, and I want to again state this for the record, our goal here, Commissioner Williams, and for all workers from the Sanitation Department to the leadership, the union leadership, to District Council 33's leadership, our goal here was to get the daily challenges that sanitation workers faced on the record so that we could make the case through data, research, along with both quantitative and qualitative analysis to affirm that they are deserving of some form of hazard pay or environmental stress pay, and it was pre-COVID. This was not for us to point fingers here. Commissioner Williams, let me say this specifically to you and your team. If there was any city department that caught hell, is catching hell, post-COVID, it has been the streets department. We know that you have done your best. I mean, 1 minute somebody is posting a picture on Facebook recording what looks like tons and tons of trash that are being short dumped in neighborhoods across the city. All of the district council members I know, and some at large, are texting and calling you saying this has got to be cleaned up. Rodents are everywhere. Your team is responding. Our sanitation workers are out there. So we want to say a special thank you to you, your team, and all of the workers. And we'll hear from them in a second. Are there any other questions for this panel from my colleagues? Seeing none, we're going to ask that you all please stay around. Don't leave us. There are just no more questions right now. And with that being said, we're going to ask Rachel to please call the next panel scheduled to testify this afternoon on resolution number 200098.
We have Charles Carrington, Omar Salam, Shakita Armstead, and Edna Sturgis. And I wanted to ask Mr. Carrington if you would like Mr. Salam to go first, since I know his phone may die.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so listen, before you all begin your testimony, I want to say to you, Charles, and to you, Omar, when I think back to that conversation on that second floor in the back room of that cluttered room with all of those boxes sitting at that table, there weren't any cameras there. We weren't on social media. COVID wasn't around, but we had a chance to have a discussion about the hazards that sanitation workers were facing on a daily basis. I committed to you during that time. We would make sure we bring that issue to light for all council members and the public to be made aware of. Unfortunately, COVID further exacerbated those hazards, and that brings us here today. So I want to say a special thank you to you, Charles, and Omar, for what you shared during that time, and ask you all to proceed with your testimony. Omar, if you are scheduled to go first.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us, and thank you for having this forum. Just to go to where Councilwoman Parker started, I think that you gave a great backstory on exactly what was happening. We did have this conversation about hazardous situations prior to COVID, because the job has always been hazardous. I think that two things that COVID showed us was that it brought forth a lot of the issues that sanitation department as well as other divisions were having, but it also showed us that we need to work together, and this needs to be a collective effort. And I will say that, even though it might have been some trials and tribulations, some tough times, the city has responded better as far as some of the ways they've addressed some of the issues with COVID. But again, to go back to my original statement, is this issue goes way beyond COVID. That article that Councilwoman Parker quoted was actually an interview that I did, which we did an interview based off of what was going on down in Kingmanton as far as what was happening with the opioid crisis. And one of the things we talked about, an example of equipment and how it can be important. Well, the commissioner and the administration have stated about giving out gloves and providing the right proof gloves. Well, part of the issue was that the city was actually providing what was called or considered slice-proof gloves. What those guys needed at the time is called puncture-proof gloves. So it's a slight difference, because the reality of it is, if you're out there picking up a needle that could potentially be, infected with anything from tuberculosis to HIV or whatever it is, that needle isn't going to slice you; it's going to prick you. So we need to actually have something like what was considered to be a prick-proof glove. As far as the boots and as far as the uniforms go, from my understanding, I think the boot trucks come around once, maybe twice a year. Guys are given 3 coveralls, 2 undershirts. Then during the entire year or during the time they have these uniforms, they're expected to take these dirty, contaminated uniforms home in the same washing machines that they wash their kids and their family clothes with and maintain them and keep them clean. One of the things that was answered or were asked was, what was one of the first types of hazards that the employees face? Well, one of the things actually is the trucks. If you look at the fumes that the trucks breathe off or are they sent out, when I started 21 years ago, the trucks were ran off of basic crude diesel fuel. Now they're ran off of what's considered to be a biodiesel fuel, which is better for the environment, but it's also more combustible, meaning that there's a higher probability that there can be an explosion based off of the truck. That's why if you look at our new trucks, they actually have an idling mechanism, whereas though if the truck idles for more than 20 minutes, the truck cuts off, because the longer the truck runs, the more probable it is to combust. That's a hazard. These brakes actually leak off expensive fumes as they're running. We have a new fuel that we put in these trucks, this D4F, or this fuel that drivers are required to put in these trucks every 2 days, which we don't know what the effects of that fuel is. So before our guys even go out and touch a bag, they're already being potentially contaminated just by what they do every day with the trucks. And we understand that this is the job we took, and we understand that there's certain things that come with the job, but we want to know that our guys are safe. Because once they get out on that street, now they're picking up everything from feces. We have people who have different health elements at home, and the city doesn't require residents to separate their diapers if they have someone in the house who's a cancer patient or has some types of other diseases. That's why a lot of our trucks come up what we call hot, or they have radiation issues. But the fact of the matter is, the entire time that I've been a city of Philadelphia employee over 21 years, I don't feel like our employees have never had the proper equipment that they need to do the job. Our guys are sent out there, regardless of the weather emergency. We got to get out there. We're the only department, we're the only division in the city of Philadelphia that flips from one job to another, meaning we go from collecting trash to picking up snow within a matter of hours. But as it goes to the weather conditions, I know forgive me for talking all over the place. When you go to the weather conditions, whether it's 100 degrees or whether it's -5 degrees, we're out there working. Rain, sleet, or snow. And the types of things that guys pick up on a daily basis, we've listed them several times. There is nothing but hazardous materials that are collected in trash, and we understand that some part is the job. We also asked and requested that the city do a better job of doing what we consider to be literacy, as far as public literacy, as far as what they can actually put out in the public, what's actually considered to be trash and refuse and recycling, and what other things might possibly need to be put to a dump or sent somewhere else. I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that we don't do a good enough job as far as educating the public as far as what they can put out and what they should put out. We're told that our guys must collect everything. We had a bed bug crisis, whereas though we had guys who were taking bed bugs home. The city didn't pay these guys to have their homes fumigated when they ran into this crisis. This is something that was an expense that they had to eat themselves. So at the end of the day, we're just really asking for our employees to actually be treated with some type of respect in the job that they do, be put on the level it does. This job I think it's the 5th most dangerous job in America, behind loggers, fishers, and some other types of jobs. 5th most dangerous and 5th most hazardous job. We have a very, 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 very low life expectancy rate after retirement. If our guys make it to retirement, on average, they live about 3 years afterwards. I can't help but believe that some of that happens with the guys and with the things that they come in at work. If you look at the amount of our guys who pass away, most of them are based off of some type of cancerous situation. Not all of our guys are smokers. I've told the story all the time. One of the hardest things I had to do was go out there and bury speak at a guy's funeral who I really consider to be a friend. A guy who was a picture of health, worked out every day, played semi-pro football until he was about 45 years old. And then out of nowhere, he contracts cancer, and within a matter of months, he's dead and gone. And something really tough to do is to stand over somebody who you love, you care about, somebody who you work with for 10, 15 years, and you got to look at family odds, tell them it's going to be okay, and nobody has the answers to how we got here. And I think that we need to invest in more studies to find out about the things that we're picking up. And I just think that it needs to be a more human aspect that's to put on the job that sanitation workers do. And I'm done. That's my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar, for your testimony. And Omar, we usually hear from the entire panel, but I know Rachel mentioned your phone might die. And before your phone dies, I just want to make sure that I was clear in what I heard you say. Did you tell me that the trucks are fueled with biodiesel fuels that are more environmentally safe, but the fuel in it of itself is more dangerous? I just want to make sure I'm clear, and I want you to explain that on the record.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you look at the fuel that's put in the truck, it's more green. It's better for the economy. But if you research, like I did on the side effects of biodiesel fuel, the longer it runs or is agitated, has a higher probability of becoming combustible. Now that probability is very low, but it's still a possibility.
Okay,
that makes sense.
I know. I just needed you to get that on the record, because I know there is someone sitting at home listening to this testimony saying, wait a minute, the city has moved to some more environmentally safer fuel, but what we're hearing is that it's potentially more dangerous. And I know, just like when I was just listening, I said, wait, we need to understand where we were going here. So no, I appreciate you clarifying that for the record. Charles, are you here?
I'm here, Madam Chair.
Charles, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Charles Carrington, President of Local 420. I'm speaking to you from experience when it comes to many things that myself and my membership face on a daily basis. Without downplaying the hard work of any other essential job that the many other city workers perform, I want to tell you about the hard work that the members of Local 427 provide. We are constantly exposed to hazardous and waste conditions on a constant basis. Throughout this opioid epidemic, our members not only swept, cleaned, flushed, and serviced these so-called hotspots, we had to service them as well by collecting rubbish and recycling in those areas. It had disposed of needles, feces, and all kinds of unwanted materials in it. We have to keep a constant watch for speeding vehicles that try to get around our trucks so that we don't get hit. Our equipment operators have to dump their loads at designated dump sites that have weights from different municipalities and companies. When they exit the vehicles, they are inhaling all kinds of elements and dust in the air from whatever else was dumped out there on the dump site. Many encounters happen when citizens become angry at our members because they set out stuff that we do not collect, or they may set out stuff that is excessive. This becomes an issue, and many of our members have had weapons or some type of things pulled out on them, while working. We have been asking for hazardous pay prior to this pandemic, and we deserve it. Far after the pandemic, we are the only department that service every house every week on a daily basis. When the positive cases began to rise in the city of Philadelphia, no one was told that if you're positive, don't set out your rubbish or your recycling. We still have to service those houses. So again, I ask you, please take into consideration this resolution so that the members of Local 427 can be recognized and possibly compensated for the hard work that they perform on a daily basis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charles. Shakita Armstead. Shakita, are you there? And did I say your name right? Shakita?
It's Shakita.
Shakita, hi, Shakita. Just state your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
My name is Shakita Armstead. I'm part of Sanitation Citywide Division. I've been with the city for 18 months. With them 18 months, I have encountered a lot of hazardous materials. As far as I'm working downtown in City with the bellies, which is trash cans downtown. Somebody smeared excuse my language, shit all over the handle. So with that being said, I would have to still service the can because that's my job. But that's hazard to touch the person poop that's on the handle. Now I only have one pair of gloves, so means after that one pair of gloves, I would have to go back to the yard to get another pair. And with that being said, I like to do overtime. So I'm throwing trash in Kensington. We got a rhythm. We throwing trash. But in Kensington, you got to slow down and examine the trash because it's needles sticking out, not just laying in the trash, sticking out. So if you was to throw the bag of trash into the hopper, that needle could go into one of your partners or somebody else on the street. And also being a part of citywide, we also got to use blowers. So you blow in feces, human feces on the street. Not only human feces, you blow in needles on the streets. Them needles could go into anybody in the street or anybody that's walking or anybody that's near you or any of your coworkers as far as the needles. But when it comes to the hazardous, I think our job is hazardous. What we do is hazardous. And a lot of the people that we work for, which is the city of Philadelphia, they acknowledge that we have a dangerous job. And when it comes to them, when they say thank you, I appreciate that because we do have a job that has to be done. It's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it. And we just want to be appreciated for doing the job that nobody else probably would do.
Thank you, Shakita. Thank you, Shakita. Thank you for your testimony. Edna Sturgis, are you still on with us?
She is not on, no.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, while we still have Charles, Omar, and Shakita here, I want to go back to something that Commissioner Williams noted. He noted that it is that the weight, the weight of the bags that you are picking up, that in and of itself has become a major hazard for sanitation department employees. Do you all concur with that?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question, and this is really from a layman's perspective. As we talked and, we're communicating with people all over the city, and we see a difference in the amount of trash that's on the ground, and you can almost measure it by zip code. So one day I personally drove through some areas. I won't tell you where they were. The only thing I'll say to you is this, and I want you, because you're on the ground doing it on a daily basis, I want you to tell me whether or not my observation was correct. I noticed that there were smaller amounts of trash on the ground where the residents who lived in those areas, when they put their trash out in high quality trash bags. Let me give you an example. Some people in different neighborhoods go to Home Depot and they buy something that is extremely expensive called contractor bags. And there are some people who will only put their trash out in contractor bags. But then you go to another community where that person is trying to figure out whether or not they're going to buy eggs, bread, milk, and meat. And they're saying, well, I don't have any money to go buy any $30 contractor bags. I'm going to go to my dollar store and get some bags. So when they're trying to be responsive to a certain degree, they put their trash in a bag, but it's not as strong as the contractor bag. Tell me from your eye level review, do you think the quality of the bags has any impact on your jobs and what you do?
Yeah. I think it does. It does. You have two options. You have the good bag, and then you have the ones that's not so good. But the ones that's not so good, you don't have to pack the bag with it being heavy. If you know it's not a good trash bag, pack it light. Me personally, I'd rather have you have 6 or 8 light trash bags out there, and then instead of 3 bags that's heavy, and you know when we pick it up, it may bust.
Okay. No, Shakita, Shakita, what you just said just now, you just gave us a solution. That was a solutions-based response you just gave. So I'm glad that you both acknowledge that what we put on the record is factual. Based on socioeconomic status, you can go into neighborhoods and see who has the ability to afford high-quality trash bags versus those who are putting their trash out in less quality trash bags, and it is impacting your job. So you're saying that we would add value if we develop some kind of campaign for the public to say, hey, if you know that your trash bags are not as strong as you would like for them to be, don't load them up, or maybe we can give some like very practical advice. Do you all think that that is something that would be helpful in an educational campaign, or do you not think that would help?
I think so. I think that would help.
Charles? Okay, colleague.
Yes.
Charles, do you think that would be helpful, and is that something that we should explore?
Definitely, Councilwoman. I think that will be greatly helpful, and we should definitely explore that, because that's the problem that we run into on a constant basis. People buy these dollar store bags, and they put so much stuff in them, and then they put them out, and when our guys go to grab them, they bust, and we clean up as much as we can. We clean up as much as we can, but we do have a time limit on everything, and we have a weight requirement.
Got it. Colleagues, Councilwoman Gim is okay. That looks like that's from the first round. Any of our colleagues have any other questions for this panel? Again, want to state for the record to Charles, Omar, Shakita, and Etna, thank you all so very much for what you do. Also have to say to Pete Matthews, thank you, Pete, for your work, and thank you for constantly working to advocate for the interests of the membership. Charles and Omar, Shakita and Etna, we got it. Let me finally ask you all for the record, Charles, Omar, and Shakita, if we, for example, we're in the middle of COVID now, so we're doing everything through Zoom and Teams and all of these virtual platforms. But when we get back, and maybe we can start doing it now while we're on Teams and Zoom. Councilwoman, I'm looking at you, Gilmore Richardson. You're constantly at community meetings and town hall meetings. I'm there. Have you, Omar, Shakita, or Charles, have the actual rank and file sanitation workers ever been asked to come to any of our community meetings? Sort of like, I know I see I see Clip. Who else do we see? Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson. It's another crew that we see. They come write the tickets. Brain freeze. What is it? Sweep. So we see the sweep officers there, but a light bulb just went off. I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe people would feel differently if they saw, the folks who are actually on the ground picking up the trash in the uniform, talking to them. And if we talk about an educational campaign, why shouldn't it be those of you who are on the ground doing the work, actually, promoting the educational campaign? I'm a visual learner. So Charles and Shakita, imagine this is a bag that is not very strong. And you filled it up to the top, and when we pick it up, all the trash comes out, right? This is a contractor bag. This is obviously stronger, so you can fit more in here. I'm just talking about being very practical. Would that be something that you think members of Local 427 would be interested in doing and coming out to talk to members of the community?
Yes.
Education is the key.
Got it. Thank you all so very much for your testimony.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, a comment.
Yes, I had a quick comment. I just wanted to thank Mr. Carrington, Mr. Salam, Shakita, all the members of Local 427 of DC 33 for their hard work. I had the opportunity to be out with 3 of your members in Kensington, specifically around the issues that you noticed, Shakita, and it is an arduous job to do. And we stayed out for 3 days in the summer, in the heat, and I just want to let you know that we appreciate the work that you all do, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and advocate on your behalf. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
And for the record, before this panel leaves, I wanted to note for the record that we have received some written testimony, and we have written testimony from Nellie Brown, who is the Director of Workplace Health and Safety Programs at the Worker Institute at Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations. And it's important that I get this on the record now while you all are still here, because I'll just have 2 more questions that I'll ask you as a result of her testimony. She writes, when cleaning or emptying garbage cans, street sanitation workers may suffer from cut injuries, skin irritations, and infections. Because they mostly work outdoors, they are exposed to cold, wind, or heat. The work setting would be expected to include exposure to environmental/traffic pollution, as well as natural UV exposure. When sweeping with a push broom or using a leaf blower, there would be the potential for bioaerosol exposure. Used needles are found in the course of tasks performed by workers in public sector departments of public works, streets, repairs, sewer collections, maintenance, wastewater treatment facilities, and parks departments. Needle stick injuries may also occur when extricating needles from the broom bristles or in engaging in the retrieval for disposal of improperly disposed needles. So let me just ask you all before we go. In Professor Brown's testimony, she speaks extensively to the hazards of needles and syringes. And you all talked about like the weight. Do you consider these right now, pre and post-COVID, to be some of the biggest threats that you're facing?
Madam Chair, Let me chime in, please.
Yes.
I've been a victim of a needle stick, and I had to, go through the necessary, precautions and all that. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to come to work and have to tell my wife to protect these steps. I mean, the thing.
Your sound's going out. Your sound's going out. Can you move your speaker closer or something? You're fading in and out.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can hear you better now. Yes.
I said one of the hardest things to do after I was stuck by a needle was having to go home and tell my wife of 15 years that we have to use protective sex for the next 6 months to a year while I go through the necessary precautions to make sure that I don't have anything. This was and we experienced it more during COVID, and it's going to be here forever. Madam Chair, can I ask one thing? That we acknowledge my Vice President, Mr. Henry Nieves. He's been on the call all day as well.
Okay, Henry, say hello. I think, Henry, is that you? Do you have on a Yankees hat, Henry?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone.
All right, thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you later. We're going to get that New York Yankees hat straight. We're going to work on that later on. But thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Carrington, I also want to get this on the record, Charles, because we mentioned this during our meeting, that some people use the term hazard pay, but I want to just note for the record, I like the term environmental stress pay or exposure pay. Some people like just hazard pay, but if you're looking at how you describe it, especially when I think about Professor Brown's testimony, that's like environmental stress. because it's not just a hazard in one way, and/or exposure pay. And so, in thinking about like a pay system, you know, like who would get environmental stress pay, and do you know what other sanitation workers get across the country?
No, I don't know who gets environmental stress pay, but we were attempting to change the wording for a long time as opposed to using hazardous pay, because that sends out an alarm to a lot of people. We were going with the word exposure pay because, you know, when you say hazardous, it scares a lot of people. And I know the city, once they, you know, confirm that our job is a hazard, they feel as though they open up the door to lawsuits and stuff like that. But they do recognize that we are exposed to all kinds of things on a daily basis.
Got it. Colleagues, before we round up this final panel, do any of you have any other questions? We want to thank each and every one of you on this panel for your testimony. We appreciate your presence. Again, as I stated for the record, we do have written testimony from Professor Nellie Brown, from the Director of Workplace Health and Safety Programs, the Worker Institute at Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations, and we will make sure that we present that to the stenographer. Are there, and we just found out that there are no more questions or comments from members of the committee. Is there anyone else here to testify on the resolution whose name has not yet been called? Okay, there being no one else here to testify on this resolution, this concludes the business of the Labor and Civil Service Committee for today. I want to say a special thank you to all of my colleagues for attending and all of those who testified. This public hearing on resolution number 200098 is recessed to the call of the chair. Thank you all very much. Let me just say this to you, 427 Pete administration, not pointing fingers. We all gonna find a way to work through this. And I'm committed that when we put our heads together with all of our members of council, you all who are on the front line, and our administration, we can come up with a solution, and we will. Thank you all so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.